Hi, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. This is by Hook or by Needles, and I am Sam. And if you've ever wondered how to join your granny squares really quickly, really easily, in an attractive way, stay tuned, because I've got at least 3 ways that you can do it with just a crochet hook. No needle and thread needed. See you in a minute.
Hooked on yarn, we weave our dreams. Loop by loop, every stitch redeems. Threads of joy in every seam. Crochet magic, like sunbeams.
Okay, here we are. I have my squares, and I have the yarn I'm going to use to join them. Now I'm using a blue for a few reasons, mainly so that you can see the color when I join it, also to highlight how, not invisible, but how hidden the joining can be. You know, you will see the color blue showing through on the white, obviously, but it will be probably less than you would be anticipating. Now, I want to thank Mrs. C for inspiring this video. On Sunday, she said she would like to learn how to join them as you go. Well, I'm not going to teach the join as you go method. I'm not a huge fan of that one myself, but I can teach you or show you how to do join squares with a crochet hook and your yarn. Now the beauty of this way is, to my mind, there's a few benefits with, and that pretty much goes for all of the methods I'm going to show you. You don't have to cut your yarn. So, you know, with a needle and thread, you have to go, oh yeah, I need about that much yarn, and then you cut it, you thread your needle, and then you sew. When you're crocheting your squares together, you don't need to do that, because you're crocheting, so you can just keep going and going and going, which means if you're making a granny square blanket, for example, you can do all the little, you know, like this section across here, and you can do this section across here, and you can have like maybe 10 or 20 squares, and then you do the second row or column, and then you can join those, and you're joining 20 squares or 2 columns together, and you're not having to keep constantly stopping, weaving in the end and getting a new piece of thread to sew them together with. So that's the benefit, or one of the major benefits. Just a moment please, sorry, I've got a cough. Oh, okay, that's better. Sorry about that. So, how do we do this? Well, the first way I'm going to show you is probably my go-to, my favorite. You've got your granny squares. You look at them. These are the right sides. You put the right sides together. And, hang on, where should I start? I'll do it here, along here. All right, so 2 right sides together. You always want to start, you know, you need a slip knot, is preferable. And you go to your corners. Now, in this granny squares, it looks like I just did 1 chain between the, or did I do 2? No, I did 2 chain. Okay, good. I did 2 chain in the corners. So we're going to just get 1 chain, and I'm going to go through the front loop. You see that? I'm going through the front loop on the first square, and then I'm going to go through the back loop on the second square. Okay, and then I'm just going to slip stitch. Okay, just slip stitch. Okay, and then we go. Now you'll find that when you're doing this, it's very easy. You can see the V's at the top, so it's very easy to pick. Yep, this is the front loop, and this is the back loop. Front loop, back loop, front loop, back loop. I'm going off screen. Hang on, let me lower it, and then maybe I won't go off screen so much. Okay, we'll try that again. So, what's something to point with? Okay, so we're going to be joining the front loops. We get our front loop and our back loop. Front loop and our back loop. Now I actually call this I call this joining method right sides together, joining through slip stitching through the back loops, because if you open it up, you are, let me show you, I'll go through the front loop on this one and the back loop on the second one. But if you open it up, you are effectively going through the back loop on both. You see how that works? It's just that because the pieces are facing each other, that they, it's, you know, one looks like you're doing the front loop and one looks like you're doing the back loop. But in actual fact, it's back loops. You're going through the back loops only on each square, on each stitch. But whatever you want to call it, or however you want to describe it, that's the way we're going to do it. So you just keep joining. Now, depending on your tension and the yarn you used and everything else, you might want to go up or down or hook size. Now I'm going to do this, like I say, with every stitch. So that looks like I've done a chain there. So even with the chain, you can go in the back or the front loop of that chain, and then the back loop of the chain behind it. It's just one loop on each. And then you, oh dear, my throat. And then slip stitch. So, loop, loop, slip stitch. One loop, two loop, slip stitch. Now I find this very fast when I'm doing it, and this is probably, I think I said at the beginning, my absolutely go-to method to use, and you can see why. It really is quite effective. It is speedy. There's no, oh, I've run out of yarn, I need to rethread a needle, or any of that. And it's just very, very simple. And in a moment, I will show you how it looks when you separate them. And you will see that, yes, okay, it's not what you would class as completely invisible, because I am using blue for starters. But if you were to use the same color, which would be cream, to join, and I'm only using blue so you can hopefully see a little clearer the effect you get. Now, okay, oh, I'm gonna have to pause again, my throat. Okay, and just a couple more. I want to finish the whole side. And I've got two more because I've got one more stitch and then I've got a chain. It's important to remember the chain, and I'll tell you why in a second. Okay, let's just do that and that. It's important, if you've got two chain in the corners, to make sure you go through the loops of one of the chains. Now I'm going to cut the yarn because I'm only doing one side. Because what will happen is, now I'll open it up. Now you can see, yes, you can see the blue, but if I pull it apart, you're going to see the blue. But imagine that was cream. See how perfectly it sits there. All these, back loop, front loops, whatever, the opposite to what you joined, are now sitting in a nice, neat little row in pairs. Oh, excuse me, I've got to clear my throat again. Oh dear. I don't think I've got it, but we'll just keep going on. Yeah, so you can see that that's really, I think, very, very aesthetically pleasing, especially for a blanket, or if you're, especially even for a cardigan or something, which is going to be up close. People are going to notice it a lot more than they will in a blanket or anything like that. So that's the method that I basically call front sides together, working into the back loops only. And I explained why I call them back loops, because you are effectively working into the back loop of this stitch and the back loop of this stitch when you open it up to look at it. It's the back stitches, and the front stitches are left unworked. Now, that's one way of doing it. Now you can see the effect it gives you on the back. It's not exactly unattractive, and if you used a cream color, you wouldn't even notice it once again. It would just blend right in with the blanket that you, or garment, or whatever it is you are making. So that's one way. What's another way? All right, well, another way, I'm going to pull this out, because I think I need to show you more ways than I have squares. Deary me, this throat. Okay, so just toss that little yarn aside. Alternatively, you can have the back sides together, the wrong sides together, and go through the back loops as well. Or you can have the wrong sides together. Well, yeah, that's the wrong sides. Wrong sides together, and you can go through both loops. Now, I'm just going to show you what that will look like. Once again, I'm just doing a slip stitch. So let's go through both loops. So we start with our corner. We want to make sure that we go through both loops on each stitch. So that's the chain, the second chain in the corner. We want to find the second chain in this corner, because the chains are important, because what happens is when you go in the opposite direction, when you're coming up this way, you want to make sure that you've still got a chain. If it's a two chain corner, you still want to make sure you've got a chain to keep going. And if you haven't, you want to work into the same chain, same chain stitch that you've already worked in, and that makes sure that the corner is really quite perfect. But I'm going in through both stitches, both tops of the V's. So you've got to be careful to make sure you get the right V, because this one at the back really sort of is tilted backwards, so it's harder to see. So top V, and then the V at the back. Now this is for a more textured look, or you know, if you want to add a little bit more color, you would do it in a different color. Once again, I'm going to do the chain stitch in between the squares. Make sure you get the both of the top stitches like that. So you're going to do both and both. Yeah, because this is going to, you know, this will be visible whether you're using cream or another color or whatever. It's going to be visible. But if you want it to be visible, then that's great. I mean, you know, some people like it because it adds a bit of texture. It adds, like I say, a bit of color. For example, if in this case I've used white, but if I decided, oh, I'm going to join with, you know, a color that's in the blanket, say blue, which I have done here, it's going to join all the squares together because you're using a blue. But let me show you So you sort of get a really thick ridge, and on either side of the ridge you get a bit of blue. A little bit more blue on the front side than on the rear side, but you get a little bit of blue and you get a ridge. And that ridge, if this was in cream, that ridge would be what's noticeable, not necessarily the blue. So you're going to get a nice textured rib added to your garment or to your blanket. So I'll just keep going to finish off this look. You can alternatively, some people like to do, so they do that, but they don't slip. They do a chain, a single crochet. So they go through both V's, and then they do a single crochet, or a double crochet if you're in the UK. Single crochet. Now this, I think, does tend to look best when you are using a different color, and I'll show you in a minute why, because it really does make the color pop, and it is really good. Like I say, if you want to have if you've got lots of multiple colored granny squares and you want to have, oops, I'm slip stitching. See how it's so hard to get into the habit or break the habit of doing the slips. You know, if you want to, you know, have one color that joins all the squares to sort of bring it all together, then, you know, this is another way of doing it. Let me just go through that one, go through that one, and remember, do a single crochet, Sam, single crochet. Okay, you're still going to get the ridge, so you get the extra texture, but you also, like I say, if you're using a separate color, you're going to get a more standout connection. It's going to stand out more and be than this bit down here, where it's a little bit of blue on either side. The single crochet way is just going to stand out that bit more. I'll just do one more, the final one, and I'll show you how this one looks. And again, I'll just cut the yarn. Now, if you were doing this, you could almost do this as you went, and you could go, you know, if you were starting in the corner, say for example, and then you had, you know, you added a square there and a square there, you could go around the corner, and then when you add your next ones, you could go around there. I prefer to do these in strips, simply because you then have a very, especially if it's a noticeable join, you have a very standard, like you join all the you know, the squares on one side only for the full length of the blanket or whatever it is, and then you bring the other one up against it, and then you join that for the full length. And it's just, it's less stop-starting, and it doesn't look, I don't think, as untidy as it can do if you're just sort of going one at a time. But, okay, so let's look at the difference in these two. This one is a slip stitch with the blue. As I say, you get a nice ridge. You get a little bit of blue pop on each side. And you can see that. Now this is the single crochet. Now, can you see how adding a single crochet, you get a nice ridge, you get all those lovely V's at the top, your piece is joined beautifully, and yeah, it's just, I mean, you can do it with cream to get just the texture, you know, like this, but if you do it in a color that you want to be, you use for all the blanket, it's really going to make it join together and become a single piece. Okay, so that is another way to do this. Okay, now what was that? That was 2, wasn't it? Now, I've got to try and remember the, I've got to try and remember the other one I was thinking of. Oh dear. There are others that you can use where you alternate. You do it like a zigzag, and that's with wrong sides facing as well. And that, once again, can be really nice. I mean, they can all be really nice, and they're so much better and easier than picking up your needle and sewing them together. Now with this one, you tend to sort of go into the space. Okay, so you start off with a slip stitch, and then from memory you go over to here and you do a single crochet in that back stitch. You come over and you skip one, and then you do a single crochet in the front stitch. You skip one, and you, hang on, which one are we skipping? Yep, we're on the third one. So you go and you do a single crochet in the next stitch. You come back, you're doing a single crochet in the one chain space. You go back, you do a single crochet, picking up both loops into the back square, then come front. Don't forget, you're skipping the opposite stitch each time. You come forward and you single crochet. You go back and you single crochet. You come forward into the space. You go back, single crochet, forward, back, forward. I mean, this way is okay. I mean, I don't use it though. It's not one of my favorite ways of joining squares. I've already done my favorite way, and that was the first way I showed you. And then we go into there. Now I will show you. Got the yarn. What you get there is you get a ridge. It's not as high a ridge as this, because in this one you're going into every stitch, so that makes it raise up, so it's not as high, and it can sort of almost be pulled apart. You can see how it sort of, well, it doesn't zigzag, but it sort of is more lacy, and it's flatter. So if you want a flatter ridge, which is a different color, or even in the cream, you can do it in cream as well, in a matching border color, then this is going to be flatter. And I guess as long as once you get into the rhythm, it's going to be quicker, because you're not you're not trying to pick up 2 stitches each time. You're only picking up 1 stitch all the way across. Okay, so we've got this one, and this one, and then the back loop one that I've already showed you, which I had to unravel because I was worried I was going to run out of stitches, run out of squares, sorry. So the other way you can do this is with the right sides together, and it's just a slight variation on doing the back loops. You're doing the front loops. So you do the front loop, and then, oops, hang on, what did I, front loop and back loop. So you're still doing the front loop and the back loop, but you've got your wrong side. Is that one of my wrong sides? Yeah, sorry. Wrong sides together instead of your right sides together. And that gives you a slightly different look again, I think. Hang on, what's our wrong sides? Yeah, I was right sides together before, so this is wrong sides together. It's not wrong sides together, because that one's, what am I doing? Is that wrong? Yep. I knew I was doing it wrong. That's the right side, wrong side. It's hard to see, sorry. It's a dark yarn. I should have looked at just the white and let it go. All right, So we'll try that again. So we're just going, we're doing exactly the same thing as we did with the back loop, you know, back loop thing, but instead, because it is still the back loops basically, but instead what we're doing is the wrong sides are facing each other rather than the right sides, and that will give you yet again another look. And it really does depend. Sorry, I think I've split the yarn there. And that, so, you know, it really does depend on your own personal preference, what you want it to look like, as to how you're going to join your squares. But each way is quick, easy. You're not forever threading needles, and in my opinion, they all look in their own way very attractive. It just, like I say, just depends what you're after. I think with a granny square blanket in particular, sometimes it does cry out for a little bit of texture. So, you know, you might sort of decide that one of these is going to be the way you want to go, you know, to get, but you might not want a very raised bump, so you go for the alternate one. Hang on, that's my dad coming around. I can hear him flop-flopping in just a moment. Oh, sorry about that. Lots of interruptions today. Alright, so I'm going to just keep on joining with our slip stitches. Like I say, you'll get slightly different. Then, you know, none of them are like absolutely outrageously different, and there are many more joining techniques that you could use that are online. These I've just shown you what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you know, yeah, you could just, you could spend hours going down that rabbit hole. So I'm using the front loops only, the front loop of this stitch, this side, and the front loop of the other side. And because I had the wrong sides together rather than the right sides together, once again, you get this sort of ridge, but the blue is more visible than with this, which is at both loops. It's not just blue like it is with this one, which is a single crochet through both loops. This is more of a, you know, dual color, almost striped. It's almost like, yeah, I've got a bit of blue at the front and the back, like we did, oh, I was going to say like we did for the first one, but I've unraveled the first one. If you can remember the first one, it's similar to that, but this part was on the wrong side. Again, you can see the right side is, oh sorry, the wrong side. You can see how well it's joined. This is really just, once again, do you want to add color or do you want to add texture to the front, to your garment or to your blanket? Really is up to you. But that's 5 different ways you can go. Each is just as easy as the next, and as I say, they are all add something a little bit different. They're not very different, but they all add something slightly different. So which one are you going to go for? Are you going to try them all and see? I mean, it doesn't hurt to try. You know, my favorite one isn't here because I had to unravel it because I didn't have enough squares to show you all 5. But yeah, so, but this one on the wrong side. You know, this is if this is the right side, this would be my favorite joining method, through the back loops. If we pretended these were right sides, that would be my favorite. But anyway, there you go. Thanks for watching, and remember, always learn from the past, think about the future, but always live for today. See you later. Bye-bye.